for those of you who have coworkers who are missing this and would like to review it later, we'll have a link and it'll be posted so that others can take a look at what we have to offer here today. And that clicking sound that you're going to hear for a little while will be me admitting people as we go. All right, so welcome, and I appreciate you all investing your valuable time here with us today. And clicking as we go. And I love this particular topic. Of all the things that I've done in my career, IAQ has been one that I've had a lot of passion about, partly because health is important to me personally. One of my children has suffered from severe allergies throughout his life, and so we kind of always focused on it for personal reasons. And I worked for Honeywell for 20 years and was connected with the Honeywell IAQ product line during that entire time. And since my Honeywell time, I've been involved in consulting and coaching contractors, and we have always integrated IAQ into the business model that I encourage them to adopt. Okay, so welcome those of you who just joined. I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. And you should be able to see my screen now. Let's see, I want to make sure I can admit people. One moment, I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. This is a new Zoom feature. You have to admit people one at a time, and if I'm presenting, I might have
Tom, if you make me a host, I'll do your admittance for you.
Okay, and who was that?
Jennifer Bagley.
Hi, Jennifer, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'll be your admin, just make me a host.
I'm going to here, one moment, you are the host.
All right, I got you. Go ahead and rock and roll.
Thank you very much. Host disabled participant screen sharing. So now you have to enable me again. Screen share. Enable me to screen share, Jennifer, please.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Ready to launch. So IAQ, FAQ, the complete story. So about 2 years ago, I took a role with an IAQ manufacturer that had some breakthrough technology they felt was worthy bringing into the market. And much of what I'm going to share today has been a result of studying intensely at a level that I never really understood what IAQ really means from a lot of different perspectives. So we're going to cover 5 key points here this afternoon with you. First, I'm going to put a definition around IAQ, and then I'll propose what I call the complete IAQ solution, meaning if we're going to address all of the issues that exist with IAQ that could impact our health and or our heating and cooling system performance in some way, then those things deserve to be part of that solution. We'll take a look at a neutral IAQ technology comparison source, which is ASHRAE, one that we all know and respect. Jennifer, if you could mute the folks in the background, I would appreciate that. That'll probably help. Then we'll take a look at the business opportunity that exists. There's no sense trying to study this unless we can make some money out of it. And then I'll give you some very brief suggestions on how you can offer IAQ solutions if you are a comfort advisor, retail sales professional, owner who sells or selling tech. Then we'll give you some ideas on how you can communicate that to your customers. So IAQ for most consumers is a little bit nebulous. If you say, what does IAQ mean? They're not going to have a very definitive response for you. Basically, what we're talking about is everything and anything that's in the home that could be impacting health in some way for people. So our homes literally contaminate in ways that we'd really rather not know. And we're going to define them into three categories. One are particulates. Those we'll just, for the moment, define as particles of dust and dirt and things like that that we're all very well acquainted with. Secondly, pathogens. Pathogens are a part of the particulate group, and we're unfortunately more aware of the impact of those now than ever. And third, third category would be chemical pollutants, which are generally known as VOCs, volatile organic compounds. VOCs come from everything that's in our homes. And these airborne chemical compounds also can have a significant impact on our health. And there are no studies that are done, there's no regulation around the impact of VOCs and intermixing with pathogens and with particles that are in the air. So we're dealing with unknowns here when we're looking at this particular category of IAQ. So from a pure physics point of view, this was an epiphany for me. And I did not understand this, that everything that we've just talked about, particles, pathogens, and VOCs from a physics point of view are a particle, meaning that all of these things are acted upon by forces in nature that exist that we don't really perceive. But all of these things are acted on by forces in nature that that are the same. So whether it is the particle or a pathogen or a VOC, they're all considered particles from a science point of view. So particles are much, much, much smaller than we can imagine. If we can see something that's in the air floating around, like a particle in a sunbeam, that is less than 1% of the total amount of particles, pathogens, and VOCs that actually are there. This graph gives an illustration. So on the far right, you see particles measured in microns. 100 microns is about the size of something that would be visible in a light beam. And then all the way down to the left-hand side of the scale, 1,000th of a micron, something obviously we can't see. That's where VOCs exist. And you can see viruses, the coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is about 0.12 microns in size. So that kind of gives you a reference, kind of scaling things out a little bit. So if you look at these particle sizes, then almost everything is below 1 micron. Keep that in mind for a moment. So a second consideration here is the relationship between the particle size and how it moves in the air. If we're going to possibly filter it out, then how it moves in the air is something that's very important to consider. So if you were to put particles in a vacuum chamber where only gravity could affect it, this graph describes what the settling rate would be. So there's a 1 micron particle. Remember I said most particles are 1 micron and below. A 1 micron size particle would take 12 hours to settle by itself. That's no air movement. A 0.5 micron size particle, 41 hours to settle. So the point here is that particle size also relates to its potential to stay airborne. And ASHRAE says in their design manual that particles 1 micron and below are virtually unaffected by gravity and stay suspended in the air. So imagine that for a moment. And in a cubic foot of air right in front of you, a cubic foot of air then, to calibrate all of this, there are 20 million particles floating in front of you. So if we take the dust that you could see, the pathogens that you're breathing in as we speak, the VOC, the chemical compounds, and all of those things, 20 million particles per cubic foot. This is what it would look like, or worse, if we could actually see it. If we did the math, another way to reference this, a basketball has about a 1/4 cubic foot of air in it. So, and each minute we breathe about a basketball's amount of air. So each minute we're inhaling 5 million tiny, tiny, very small particles. Yuck. Terrible thought. The smallest of these particles are called ultrafine. You'll see a reference to PM 2.5, perhaps, if you've gotten into IAQ a little bit. The media is starting to publish PM 2.5 particulate count. PM 2.5 is 2.5 microns, which is huge. It's a basketball-sized particle. That would be considered fine particulate. Ultrafine would be the small ones that we're talking about. And ultrafine particles, when they're inhaled, remember 5 million every minute that we breathe, the smallest of those, when we breathe them in, pass into the lungs and directly into the bloodstream, affecting every organ in the body. And there's actually a membrane at the top of our nasal cavity where these smallest particles will transfuse through the membrane and go directly into the brain. So this is not like a small thing, right? These smallest particles are something that can impact our health in every way. Here's a video that I'd like to share with you that will illustrate what I'm talking about. Just about a 2.5 minute video. Let's take a look and listen.
Your home is where you and your family live, play, and relax. It is a place of comfort, and it's where you feel safe. But the air you're breathing may not be. Our homes are filled with invisible airborne contaminants. Normal household filters are only effective at removing the largest airborne particles. For each large particle that a typical air filter might capture, there are millions of other smaller particles that it can't, including microscopically small pathogens such as bacteria and viruses, and hundreds of airborne chemical compounds. These contaminants will be inhaled deep into the lungs and even the brain. From there, they are transported to every organ of the body. Doctors and scientists agree it's these smallest contaminants that are the greatest threat to our health. The problem with removing the smallest airborne contaminants is they are unaffected by normal air movement in the home, and they remain suspended in the air like fruit in gelatin. There they stay unless something is done to remove them. But secure air works differently. Developed for demanding cleanroom and hospital operating room environments, Secure Air's active particle control technology has proven its ability to safely capture and destroy airborne particles, pathogens, and chemical compounds. Once installed in your heating and air conditioning system, Secure Air's active particle control begins removing airborne contaminants from every room in your home. These contaminants are brought back to the air purification cartridge, where they are captured. The pathogens are inactivated and killed, and chemical compounds are broken down into harmless basic elements. Those airborne particles that avoid capture are reconditioned and sent back into the home to act like microscopic magnets and sponges, attracting and absorbing airborne contaminants and returning them to the air purifier for removal. Along with keeping the air that you breathe so much healthier, the Secure Air purifier is also protecting your heating and air conditioning system from dirt buildup, so you will have fewer maintenance issues. It will last much longer, provide you with more comfort, and save you money on your utility bills. With Secure Air, you have the peace of mind knowing that your air purification system is constantly at work, protecting you and your family with the safest, healthiest, and cleanest air possible today.
So you saw an illustration of these ultrafine particulates being breathed in and going into the brain and all the way down into the body through the bloodstream and into every organ in the body. And ALA, EPA, CDC all acknowledge that these small ultrafine particulates are a real health threat. So science also knows that removing microorganisms or pathogens are particularly challenging, not just because of their size, but because of their mass and other factors. So what can we do about all of this? We have 20 million particles per cubic foot. They're floating around in front of us. We're breathing all the time. We can't walk around with a respirator on all the time. So from a practical point of view, the first thing to consider would be to reduce the amount of contaminant that could be coming into the space. Second would be controlling the source of a contaminant. And third would be then removing it from the living space. Let's look at all three. In most homes, or all homes really, unless they're balanced, homes are all under what we'll call a negative pressure. What that means is, and some of you have studied this if you're into home performance, what that means is warm air in the home rises, just like you can see in this graphic. Whether it's summer or winter, warm air is rising. It's a small amount of temperature gradient, but that difference produces a pressure in the home. That slight pressure that's at the top level of the home means that air is going to leak out of the attic, and it's going to leak out from the perimeter. It's going to leak out of the attic. It's going to leak out from every penetration, from gas piping, venting, plumbing, piping that goes out. All these little leaks are going to let air leak out of the space. And so if air is leaking out, then air is going to replace whatever air is leaking out is going to be replaced. It's going to be replaced from the outside. So for those of you who are into home performance, you know that if we seal the attic, and many contractors have this in their business model, if we seal the attic and prevent the warm air from leaking out of the space, then we prevent the infiltration. So sealing the attic and sealing the home is a remedy, one remedy for reducing infiltration. Controlling pollutant sources would be next, right? So we have pollutants in ductwork. We have coils that get contaminated, blowers get dirty. And so regular maintenance, cleaning those things and using some technology like ultraviolet light on an evaporator coil can have a very significant effect on reducing the source of pollutants that's coming into the home. In Minnesota, where I lived, you have hot, humid summers, and the evaporator coils can get mold or mildew accumulation on them. And that mold or mildew can send spores into the space that can cause allergy reactions. You also have issues in your homes in Minnesota where the homes are so tight that when winter occurs, the moisture that's inside of the home will migrate through the wall to the outside wall. And outside, when it's minus 10 degrees, that moisture that's going to migrate to the outside wall will condense and freeze and cause ice dams. And you've had issues in your climate where in the springtime, when things thaw, that ice will melt and mold will accumulate inside the wall cavity of the home, and you can literally destroy a home that way. In terms of removing pollutants, we have a number of sources. Of course, using fans in the kitchen and the bathroom make a lot of sense, and you don't want to disable the timers that are allowing ventilation to occur by code. We also have whole house ventilators, something that's very common in Minnesota, and that's a very important remedy. And then once you do ventilate as well as you can, then the next step would be to filter and remove particles, pathogens, and VOCs, break them down and activate them and remove them from the space. So those are the three general strategies we have for removing and reducing the amount of contaminant that are in the space. So when I speak about the Complete IAQ solution, I'm referencing these 5 categories, and I'm going to go through them one at a time. And you all offer some IAQ solutions now, and every one of them that you offer in one way or another will provide some benefit. And I'm going to go through what these 5 categories are. Then we'll take a look at ASHRAE's position on each of these technologies that are available that you're offering to your customers. And then we'll connect the dots here. So let's take a look at number 1. First, most important thing, really, I think, from an IAQ solution point of view, is you have to have something that's going to actually remove the particles from the space. Remember, we said that there are 20 million particles per cubic foot. Remember that we said that most of them are unaffected by gravity and airflow, and they stay suspended in the space. You saw that illustration in the video. So that means that there are millions and millions of particles in the air, and even with the system fan turned on, we're not going to, those particles don't have enough mass so that they'll be caught up in the airflow and brought back to a filter. That means you have to have some technology, some solution that's going to cause the small particles, the millions of particles that are suspended in the air, something that's going to cause them to clump up. It's called agglomeration. What's going to make them attract to each other, to get larger, to have enough mass so they can be caught up in the airstream and brought back to, number 2, a filter. So there are technologies, which we'll see here in a moment, PCOs and ion generators that will cause particles to attract to each other and get heavier and clump up. But those technologies don't have a filter where the particles can be captured. So you supplement that with a separate device. So step 1, what's going to make particles get larger? Step 2, what are we going to capture them on? Step 3, once we capture these things, we've got to kill the bad guys, and we have to break down the chemical compounds that can cause health issues. So your technology must provide that solution as well. Ideally, the technology would not produce any harmful byproducts. So we don't want to put something back into the air that can cause a health issue like ozone and that sort of thing. And then 5th, the technology solution that we have should not negatively impact the heating and air conditioning system. And we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. So let's take a look. Here's the ASHRAE position on filtration and air cleaning. This document and a second one from the EPA is available right now on the site that you registered with. It's available for download, so you can download the entire PDF documents. And I've highlighted certain sections that will get you quickly to the topics that we're discussing today. So the first thing that this ASHRAE document says, it's focusing on the health consequences of filtration and air cleaning technologies. And in general terms, they say this is a late 2018 document, although it's authorized through 2021. It does say that that right now, the only solid evidence that ASHRAE has regarding any technology that's going to positively impact health is around media filters. Okay, so I'll just put that up front. So let's take a look at mechanical filters first. You have 1-inch filters, of course, 1-inch flat faced, 1-inch pleated filters. We have 2 and 4 and 6-inch filters, and you all know that they're rated in efficiency terms. And mechanical filters will in fact get dirty, which means that some of the particulate that's in the air is large enough and heavy enough to get caught up in the airstream and be brought back to it. And electronic filters are generally a little bit more effective than mechanical filters. Some electronic filters will actually cause some particle charging and improve the efficiency with that sort of technology. And then there's a category called sorbet filters. These are designed to absorb VOCs specifically. This would be charcoal, activated charcoal, or potassium permanganate. There's a brand called Purafil that maybe you folks recommend. So these things are designed to remove particles, or in the case of sorbent filters, VOCs. The particle filters are measured in an efficiency known as MERV, which you're probably all familiar with. And a 1-inch filter is probably a MERV 8. You have other filters ranging all the way up for residential use to MERV 16. And the higher the MERV rating, the smaller the particle that the filter is going to be able to collect. Hospitals use a MERV 14 or a MERV 16. MERV, there's a disadvantage, as we all know, with the higher the MERV rating. And that disadvantage from a heating and cooling performance point of view is that we restrict airflow. Static pressure is the equivalent in heating and air conditioning to high blood pressure in people, in the human body. So the higher the static pressure or the higher the blood pressure in the system, the more damaging it is to the system performance. If airflow is restricted significantly, which many of you know, then that's going to cause more wear and tear on the equipment. The system efficiency goes down. That means that bills go up. It's noisier, which is usually the first sign that you have high static pressure in a system. If you have resistance to airflow, high static pressure, you're not moving the air to the farthest rooms. That means you have comfort issues and complaints. And if you have restricted airflow, then you're not bringing as much air back for filtration and purification. So everything that can be bad for a heating and air conditioning system performance, performance happens when we restrict airflow. So we'll just kind of leave you with that thought for the moment. Let's move on to ionizers. The most famous of all ionizers was the sharper image. I'll show you a picture here in a moment. But ionizers use a technology that actually put ions, lots of them, billions of ions in the air. And these ions are positively or negatively charged. And you flood the air with these positive and negatively charged, very small particles, and they work kind of like magnets. And so a positively charged ion will be attracted to something that's negative that's floating in the air. And the opposite for other ions. And so that will cause particles to attract to each other and get heavier, clump up. The fancy term is agglomeration again. And once we agglomerate these particles, they get heavy enough, have enough mass, they'll be caught up in the airstream and go back to a filter. The difficulty from a health point of view is that there isn't any proof to date that this technology will actually destroy the things that can cause health issues like pathogens and viruses and things like that. There's some studies that some manufacturers have produced recently that have said that their technology will be effective on the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And you want to be careful when you look at those reports because they're done in test chambers. Every one that I've seen is done in a test chamber. And just for reference, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is kind of a wimp. If you put a bunch of it in a box and put a light bulb in that box, the light bulb would kill it. So it's not very difficult to kill. It's just problematic because it's in the air that we're breathing all the time. So the ionic breeze, the sharper image product, was the most famous ion generator. And as most of you, or many of you know, it was the company that produced them was $1 billion company, and the claims that they made about improving health were eventually proved false in a class action lawsuit, and the $1 billion company went into Chapter 7 bankruptcy. $1 billion company destroyed because the claims were not substantiated. So we'll move on to UV lights, and you have two types of UV technology that you generally offer your customers, I would think. One is a UV light that is designed to go in the ductwork and as pathogens pass by, do some amount of destruction or inactivation to them. And then we have the UV technology that is designed to radiate relatively permanently on an evaporator coil. Between those two, the UV lights that are purported to destroy viruses that are in the airstream have some efficacy to it. In other words, there is some destruction of the pathogen that's floating by. The UV light that shines on coils is highly effective. And that's because UV can be effective when it has two characteristics. One is intensity, and two is time. So if you're looking at a pathogen flying by in the ductwork, and if you did the math, which I have, because I just do this sort of thing, if when you have airflow at maximum capacity, let's say you have 2,000 CFM going through a system at 492 feet per minute, that means that you have a bacteria or a virus flying by at 8 feet per second. Well, at 8 feet per second, you have what's called a kill effectiveness of maybe 10 or 15%. So there are some viruses and bacteria that actually will be destroyed with the UV application in the ductwork. The more effective application for UV is when it's radiating on the coil, both the outside and the inside, and then that will destroy all of the mold or mildew that accumulates on it. That's a great application, one that I always recommend to my clients. Okay, moving on to PCOs or photocatalytic oxidation. Brands of these that you might recognize, Guardian Remy or Air Scrubber. This technology also creates particles, hydroxyl ions or ions that will cause agglomeration. It puts these ions into the air that cause things to clump up, get heavier, and be circulated back into the air to be collected. ASHRAE's assessment of them though, is that they also produce a byproduct that can be harmful to folks. So when you get the documents that you can download from EPA and ASHRAE, you can read more detail about that. But PCOs do a positive thing, cause particles to clump, but they also have a downside with other byproducts that can cause health issues. This particular study here actually showed that the byproduct of the PCO device interacted with other VOCs that are in the air and created formaldehyde, not something probably that we'd want to breathe. And very well-known PCO right now is Molecule. It's marketed very effectively online. It's a fairly expensive product, $500 or $600 or $700. And I just found here recently that there's a class action lawsuit against them, or it's being created because of claims that can't be substantiated about killing pathogens. So just reference for you, take a look at it. Generally speaking, the standalone or portable air cleaning devices, which is most of the market, worldwide, there's over $20 billion worth of IAQ products sold, and the majority of them are portable devices. So just kind of think about it, right? There's a portable device. It has maybe a tiny little fan in it. It's maybe going to move a little bit of air, no matter what's inside of that device, whether it's a filtering device or even some sort of UV light or something. It just can't logically be very effective. There are applications where the better technologies can be put in a bedroom. So someone suffering from an allergy or something like that, there can be some effectiveness from it, but it's a shadow of effectiveness compared to a central system and the type of technology that you could offer for the complete HVAC solution. Ozone, just to make this clear, ASHRAE and EPA and American Lung Association, all of these entities are very negative about any amount of ozone. There are some ozone generators that are positioned as an IAQ solution. Bad juju completely for an ozone generator as an IAQ remedy in a space where we're breathing. And then they also caution against ozone as a byproduct from the technology that's doing something else. So a PCO, for example, that might make ozone, or an ion generator that might make ozone, or an electronic air cleaner that might make ozone. They're all recommending against that sort of thing. California has the toughest laws in the country around that, and it's very difficult for a product to pass the California standard around ozone generation. And I think I made that point well enough. Okay. So ASHRAE is redoubling their efforts, and we can look forward to new standards on how IAQ devices are going to be tested, and particularly around their efficacy for health purposes. And this will help kind of clear the air for us, I think, when you represent these products to your contractors, or you represent them to your homeowners. You can do it with confidence that what the manufacturer's claims are substantiated by science behind it. These are the documents that you can download, and I encourage you to do that. So let's take a look at the business opportunity. The IAQ market has exploded for the obvious reasons. It was already growing substantially, and you could see worldwide we're looking at, by 2024, over almost $10 billion worth of IAQ products being sold. These are just this is the air purifier type of product. The overall market, with, if you include humidification and other technologies is over $20 billion. So I'm going to give you some perspective around what we call the incremental profit story. And if you're with Johnstone, this would be something for you to possibly coach your contractors around. If you're a contractor, then this would be something for you to consider as justification for including enhancements and other upgrades in your proposals. So the incremental profit story is focused around this idea that when you add an enhancement like an air purification product, or it could be a humidifier or an upgraded thermostat or anything, adding any enhancement to a job that doesn't take any more labor or overhead to install will produce a significant improvement in gross and net profit. So let's take a look. So gross profit, as you know, is what's left after you deduct equipment, material, and labor from your selling price. And net profit is what you have left after you deduct all your other costs, including overhead and sales commissions. So that's kind of the bottom line. Net profit before you pay taxes, lots and lots of taxes. I'm going to define something else here. Accessory, which we kind of all know as something that we add on compared to this term enhancement, which we'll say is something that has value, additional value or usefulness or attractiveness. So these, we talk about accessories or options when we refer to IAQ products or humidifiers and other things. And I'd like to ask you to consider reterming that in your own mind. So kind of do a little bit of wordsmithing for yourself and substitute for accessory the term enhancement, right? It's a little more value added type of context to it. This is an illustration of a typical job, and I work with a number of Minnesota contractors, and a $7,000 to $8,000 replacement sale is a pretty common number. And if you're a good contractor and you manage things well, and I know you all do, or your contractors do, this would be pretty representative of what your breakdown of costs would be. So you have a fully commissioned salesperson making 10%, overhead at about a third, and bottom line net profit 10%. So out of $8,000 sale, what the company has left over is about $800 worth of net profit. Keep that number in mind. And now I'll ask you to consider this. If a typical replacement job is a furnace, air conditioner, maybe a little bit of return air, ductwork modification, and a 1-inch filter, how much additional time would it take if the only thing we changed was adding a high-end IAQ device like an electronic filter or a MERV 16 filter or something like that? Would there be any additional labor time to install this high efficiency IAQ device? And the answer is no, there wouldn't be. So the point of this again is when you install equipment and you add this extra product like an IAQ device that doesn't take the job any longer to install, the installers kind of get it done in the same day, then you can say that the additional gross profit from that enhancement is all incremental net profit. Example, let's say that you added an IAQ device for $2,000 and the product cost was $1,000. That means if we have no additional labor cost and no additional overhead, that means that we have an incremental gross profit of $1,000. Well, if that incremental gross profit doesn't have any labor or overhead attached to it, it all falls to the bottom line. It's called incremental net. So back at the original job, if we made $800 on the whole job normally. And now we add an enhancement that takes no more time and no more overhead. We've added another $1,000. We've just gone from an $800 net profit to $1,800. That represents, instead of a 10%, an 18% net profit. And I know I don't have to ask you for feedback about this. Which job would you rather sell? One at $1,800 or one at 800, and every hand would raise for the 1,800. Okay, so incremental net. So this is the business case for adding IAQ solutions to your proposals. Now, one last, as we kind of wrap up here, going to give you some additional perspective. Back in the day, most of you are not old enough to remember this, Honeywell dominated the industry with the F50, the F300, F100 air cleaner, and they were very good at marketing their product, and they really helped create the IAQ market for the residential replacement HVAC contractor. They were sold 3 or 4 times and kind of lost their way and harvested profits. And I know all this because I was working for them, and stopped investing and developing that market. And we lost everything that had been gained. And since then, the market has been filled with a plethora of different technologies and all sorts of information about what they do, and they produce these things, and we want to believe everybody who tells us their story. And I think you've probably all heard lots and lots of stories. It's very confusing right now. So I'm encouraging you to read the documents that I shared with you that are downloadable and make up your own mind about what technology does and how effective it is. And then I'll challenge you with these 2 questions. If you knew what the best possible solutions to all the IAQ issues were, would you want to let your customers know about them? I think the answer there is probably yes. So then the second question is, if you knew but didn't let your customers know, and they found out from someone else, would they feel better or worse about you? And I think the answer probably is they'd feel worse. So now that you have some information and you're going to get more, you kind of have an obligation to appropriately engage your customers, whether you're a contractor or you're with Johnstone. Engage your customer in conversation about what you've learned about these different technologies, what you're going to learn about them, what they can and they can't do, and come up with a way to offer these things to customers. I'm going to give you the final section here is just a little bit of sales coaching on how you can be effective at doing this. So when you're selling, when your contractors are selling to the consumer, they have 3 things that they can sell. First, have to sell themselves. Secondly is sell their company. And third, which is where the ball gets missed, is sell a solution to the customer's problems. What I see and have seen for 45 years is contractors offer bids, quotes, and estimates with product on them, a 14 SEER or a 98% furnace. People are not buying those things. They're buying a solution to the problems that they have. So that means that we have to engage the customer, find out what the problems are, and then offer appropriate solutions, multiple solution choices that can solve those problems. So there are 3 things I'd encourage you to consider. One is, when it comes to selling your company, create a presentation, create a short 5-minute presentation about what differentiates your company and the value that your company has to offer. Second is decide on how you're going to offer your IAQ solutions, and I'm going to give you 2 alternatives. One is to include the IAQ solution in a package. So you offer 3 or 4 package solutions. There's a lot of software out there now that lets the contractor include IAQ solutions with the equipment, platinum, gold, silver, bronze type solutions. This is one of them called Trust Pro. And if there's interest in this, somebody just ping me later and I'll be glad to get you information about it. Another solution comes from a friend of mine named Rick Picard. Rick is a sales manager for a company called Ionizers and about in Boston. And this will get your attention. Rick sells over $8 million a year in retail sales. That's normally what 6 or 7 retail sales professionals sell. So he obviously has his act together. And this is how Rick sells IAQ. He sells it before, he offers it before he talks about equipment. So at the end of his sales process, he says that he'll be glad to put together some choices on equipment, but before we look at that, let's take a look at the solutions we have for the allergy issues or the noise issue that we had, or improving the air quality that you want in your home. And he uses this slide exactly. And if you want this, ping me and I will send it to you. He says this. He says, we have 3 solutions for you, and they're all very good. The first solution and the best solution is this product. What this does is it goes out into the air and it grabs everything, it makes it bigger, and it brings it back and it captures it on a better than hospital grade filter. Once it captures it, it destroys all the pathogens, it breaks down the chemical compounds, and it renders them harmless. And then it also takes care of things, including like the virus, the COVID virus, and so on. And it's the very best solution that we have, and it would be $2,500 or $30 a month. And then we have another good product that will only work on the particulates and germs. It's $1,000 and $11 a month. And we have a very good filter that works on particles. That's $600 or $7 a month. And then he says, so which of these 3 do you think would be best for us to keep in mind to match up with your equipment choice later? So why is this genius? I think it's wise because he is getting a commitment up front, or at least a partial commitment, before he goes into talking about the higher cost of the equipment. He's getting a relatively low cost commitment on the IAQ solution. His results, by the way, are 70% on the media filter, 20% on the mid-range, and 10% on the high end. And so last slide, this is what I'll leave you with, these 3 thoughts. Number 1, differentiate yourself as a contractor, or coach your contractors to differentiate themselves around IAQ. Include it in their sales process. Include IAQ solutions as part of your proposals, whether you use Rick's method or you use the trust method, both of them work. And then recognize the business case that you could potentially double your net profit with IAQ as an incremental sale. There's nothing that can improve your bottom line and make your financial statement stronger than upgrading and adding enhancements with the methods that we've shown you today. So that's it. The IAQ FAQ, the complete story. And Jennifer, I think I'll turn it right back to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. And you guys, thanks to everybody that's attending. I'm going to take over screen share for just a second. And I want to give you a couple tips on how to be able to access different information on the website, and give you guys a couple tips to make it really, really easy when you're navigating all of the breakouts. So first and foremost, make sure you're on the right website. It is johnstonebloomington.hvaclms.com. When you get there, we are in breakouts. We're headed to session 2, which is obviously IAQ, which Tom did such an excellent job presenting. In this session, About 50% of the presentations are live and ready for you to access on their pages. So if you click on one of the sessions you guys want to be able to join, you're going to see right below the heading title, there is a video here, and you guys can jump right in those sessions right out of the gate. Now, some of these presentations are going to be live just like yesterday. So when you go over to their page, there is a button that says Zoom meeting link. That Zoom meeting link is like a lobby of a hotel. As soon as they come in, you're in a lobby. And from there, you guys can click on an icon in your Zoom control panel that says breakout rooms. As soon as you click on breakout rooms, it's going to pop up and it's going to give you each of the different options for the live sessions. Just hover over that title and it's going to say join. Click join and you're going to be right in that breakout room with the presenter there. And then when that session is over, you're going to leave that room. You'll be back in the main lobby and you'll be able to take a break before the next session, in which you'll be able to come right back in, same lobby, jump into the breakout room, and you'll be able to go from there. Now, if you jump on and for any reason you don't see the button on your Zoom control panel that says breakout rooms, all that means is you need to update your Zoom app. So if you check out activity on the activity page, I've posted a quick link right here. Click this link, download the most recent Zoom client, and you're going to be able to upgrade your link right in between this session. So you have about 30 minutes before the first session, the next session starts, first breakout. Just click that link, make sure you've got the most recent version of Zoom, and that's going to give you guys access to that breakout room, and you'll have no problems through the rest of the event. Other than that, Miss Pam, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I don't. Thank you so much, Tom. That was very informative. Interesting. Kind of makes me want to go clean my house. So
Don't
Right.
vacuum.
All this,
It brings it
all
all
of a sudden I want to filter on my face. So you guys, some of the other things you want to check out online, there is an area where you can jump into forums and discussions. The great part about the discussions is you can dive in and start having conversations, asking questions. You have these amazing research or experts in these areas. Tom's here. He can answer questions afterwards. If you guys want to start a discussion or jump into one of these discussions, you can do that through the discussion area. You guys can also access any of the speakers and or your TSMs directly from the members area. All you're going to do is click on the message icon. You can follow them in case they post new content. I know Tom has posted some great videos and blog posts, but definitely follow speakers, follow the coaches. You can send them direct messages. Those are private messages, so you can access those yourself. And then finally, each of you have a profile online. You guys have the ability to update your profile. This website's not going anywhere when this event is over. In fact, everything that's been done has been recorded, digitized, and it's a permanent asset you guys can get access to under courses. So one, go into your profile, update your profile information so we all know who you are and everybody can reach out and connect. Two, under your account information, you can click on email preferences. And in your email preferences, you can choose how you want to get notified. So as you guys are using the website, connecting with your TSMs, and any of the coaches and each other, you guys can send messages, tag each other, kind of like a social group on Facebook. And if you want to make sure you get those notifications, just come down here, click this yes button, and that's going to make sure that those notifications come directly to your email address. All you got to do is click yes, save changes, and those are here. And for anybody who is new, if you guys missed yesterday's sessions and you want to catch your team up, or someone on your team was not able to attend, all of those sessions have already been posted under courses. You guys can jump in and go through any of these courses right online. Just click the course. So if you guys missed, for example, Power Selling Pros presentation yesterday, which was pre-recorded, just click in here, click Start Course. And once you're in this course, you're going to have access to each one of those lessons. So on the left-hand side, you can see there's 2 lessons in the Power Selling Pros area. Just hit play. When you're done with that, scroll down to the bottom, click Mark Complete, and it's going to put a little checkbox through here that's going to show you completed that lesson. That way you and your team can each keep track of everything that you have completed and what else there is available on this site. It is filled with powerful information. So again, you guys, thank you so much on behalf of Johnstone Supply, Amana, and CO Web Group. We appreciate you guys here today, and we'll see you back on the next breakout session in 30 minutes. Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I'm just going to make it snow while we close out of here.